Welcome to Discover the Difference. My name is Gabe Earl, and I'm here with my co-host, Jamie Reed. We're here with Dr. Allen, medical director and founder of the Hoag Institute. We thought that entrepreneurism is dying in medicine, but Dr. Beyer has shown us that it's still alive. Him and the Hoag Institute are providing the top level of care from the best athletes to the everyday pickleball players. And we're going to hear from him on how he's really grown the Hoag Institute and what he's doing today in medicine. So please stay tuned, stay with us, and hear this exciting info.
So will you take us back? Like, how did you always know you wanted to be involved in orthopedics, or where did that come from?
So I knew I wanted to be a doctor from the time I was probably 5 or 6 years old. It was just one of those things that I loved. Ben Casey and Dr. Kildare. I don't know if anybody in this room is old enough to remember them. My grandfather was an orthodontist, so that was a little bit of a professional, role model, kind of speak. My dad owned a liquor store, so I always said he was an anesthesiologist. But it just came to pass. I mean, and then as I got into my teens, it was between rock and roll and going to medical school. I mean,
Those two are really closely related.
Very closely related. Well, as a surgeon, I get to pick what music is played during my surgeries, so there is kind of a tie.
So this didn't come from the fact of being Jewish, and your mom said you could either be a doctor or a lawyer, and you had to pick one of the other?
This wasn't my mother. This was maybe my grandmother a little bit. I knew I wanted to do it, to be in medicine. And I knew I wanted to do something surgical, because I've always been like a doer. I've always liked to build things and put things together. And even when I was in the band, I had a Hammond organ. You're always tinkering with those things. I was tinkering with that all the time. So the band thing fizzled when I saw Billy Joel playing. He was a year or two older than me, played the organ also, sang also, and he was still in his garage band in those days. And I looked at him, watched him, and I said, well, this guy's still in a garage band. I'm in a garage band. I'm going nowhere, because look at this guy's talents. I quit the band, passed organic chemistry, went to medical school, and then, of course, 5 years later, I'm in the car and I hear Piano Man come on the radio, and I said, well, I guess I made the right choice.
So Billy Joel inspired you to
Billy Joel is why I am a doctor today.
Wow.
So once I got into medical school and could really hone in on what I liked, third year medical school, you kind of rotate through every specialty. And when I got to orthopedics, I realized this is it. This is what I'm meant to do. I just loved it. It just fit everything that I needed creatively. Patients weren't that sick. They're injured, not sick. There's a big difference. And I hate sick people, so that worked. And I just realized that was the field for me. So I did my residency in orthopedics in New York at the Hospital for Joint Diseases. Came out to California after my residency and did a fellowship, a special extra year in sports medicine with Dr. Curlin and Dr. Job, who were kind of like the sports medicine guys back in those days in the United States. I got that fellowship and was really, really happy to get it, and thought I was going to go back to New York and be a sports medicine doc in New York. And I was in California it was July 1st that fellowship started. I remember this like it was yesterday, even though it was 40 years ago. It was July 1st. By the end of July 4th weekend, I knew I was not going back to New York. Because, like everybody else who comes here from the East or the Midwest, the weather just seduces you, and here I am. So I'm in practice, going into practice in Orange County. I met a guy down here who needed a young associate. We were a 3-man group at that time. Nobody was fellowship trained in those days. Everybody was just a generalist. I was one of the first guys with a fellowship really in Orange County. And it just grew. I mean, we've grown it organically. I like the idea of being in private practice, because the business side of running a practice, not just being employed by a Kaiser or a foundation or something like that, appealed to me. And that was 40 years ago, and it's just been like a rocket ship ever since then. It's been really, really very, very gratifying.
So why sports? Is that just the thing that if you're an ortho, you're going to be in sports, or is that
The people that get banged up the most?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, orthopedics before was largely sports and activity driven. I mean, injuries happen lots of times besides auto accidents when you're playing sports. I was never a particularly good athlete. You know, the Jewish Sports Hall of Fame is one of the smallest buildings in America. But I love sports. I love to follow sports. I loved the statistics. I loved, just comparing great athletes to great athletes. I grew up, I remember 1969 when the Mets, the Knicks, and the Jets all won championships in a 12-month period. I mean, that was huge for a New York kid.
Never happened again.
And it never will, especially with the Knicks. But so I always loved sports. So going into sports medicine really was a way to kind of meld something that I really enjoyed with what I was doing vocationally. And I think it makes you a better orthopedic surgeon, quote, sports medicine doctor, to know the sports because you understand the mechanism of injury that an offensive lineman on a football team is going to sustain versus a softball player who's more likely going to get a shoulder problem. So following sports and knowing sports, I think, gives you a higher level expertise in terms of diagnosing and knowing how to deal with specific sports injuries. So they kind of came together.
Does that translate into your approach? Because if you have a traumatic injury and you see 3 different orthopedic surgeons, you're probably going to get 3 different approaches to how to fix the problem.
On some things, yes. Some things are very black and white, and you know what needs to be done. An end-stage arthritic knee that needs a knee replacement, everybody's basically going to say the same thing. But how to fix a cruciate ligament tear, say, there's just, I remember how we did it back in the day, 40 years ago, compared to how we do it now. It's a totally different operation.
How's that changed?
Well, back in the day when I first went into practice, you were going to fix a cruciate. First, we didn't do anything to them many years ago. It was just a career-ending injury. Sorry, you tore your cruciate. Your career's over, right? Then we evolved to the point where we could reconstruct it, but it took an incision about 18 inches long and harvesting a tendon and putting a bunch of sutures in it and drilling holes and just a very, very prolonged period of immobilization in a cast. So by the time you came out of the cast, your leg was like a noodle, and a very, very long rehabilitation. Now we do it arthroscopically with just a tiny little incision. There's a couple of different grafts that we use, gracilis tendons, quad tendon. It's 5 different ways that you can fix it in terms of what you substitute it with. And you move them right away. You don't weight bear them right away, but you let the knee move right away so they don't get the stiffness, they don't get the atrophy. They're back in a much faster time frame, and they're back very often. Something like 60 to 70% of our current ACL reconstructions who are professionals get back to their professional sport. That's a phenomenal statistic when it used to be 0. So in that particular case, yeah, you'll get 3 or 4 different opinions on how to fix it. Many of them will often wind up at the same outcome, but it's how you get there.
Right. What you were involved with a lot of different professional sport affiliations. Like, Jesse Smith introduced us to you. You're affiliated with the Olympic water polo. How does it unfold as a business that you move from being an orthopedic surgeon to having these relationships like that?
Like in any other business, relationships are the key to success, both financial success and professional success. Interestingly enough, almost kind of cattywampus in terms of how it works, taking care of athletes at the professional elite level is a bit more of a chore than the vanity part of it of, hey, I'm the team doctor for, like, 2 of my colleagues are team doctors for the Chargers. It takes so much time. It takes so much babysitting. The liability is off the charts, especially when you're talking about professional NFL or NBA players, that I'm not, as I'm in the twilight of my career now, having done this for 40 years, I'm at a point where it's like, I don't think I need that stress anymore. I'd rather just take care of, Joe Blow playing pickleball, who lives down the street from me, and he's not going to hassle me
It's a dangerous sport.
if he becomes a B pickleball player instead of an A pickleball player. But it is a vanity play, but it's also raised the bar in terms of what we see from professional athletes on the field. We've extended careers. Frank Jobe invented the Tommy John procedure that he named after the patient, which shows what a humble man Frank Jobe was. Now something like half of the pitchers at the professional level have a Tommy John procedure at some point in their career, because the forces that they're able to develop now pitching compared to the old days rip elbows apart. So they all need it at some point. Now let me use this platform to bully pulpit a little bit. Kids who play one sport year round are much more likely to get those kinds of overuse injuries, like a Tommy John elbow, an ulnar collateral ligament strain, than a kid who is the 3-sport, 4-sport kid who lives back east where the weather's not like it is here and they can be outside doing it 365 days a year. So my first thing that I counsel parents is, don't take your 12-year-old and say you're going to be a professional baseball player and then it's baseball, 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 baseball. From then on, let him play some soccer. Let him play some basketball. Let him do other stuff. So it's healthier. It's healthier for him. It's going to make him a better baseball player. I have a radio show that I do on Angels Radio called Doctor in the Dugout, and every professional high-level athlete that I've ever had on the show has always said he's so happy he did other sport, he or she, so happy they did other sports because it made them better at their major sport. The skills that you pick up footwork-wise playing soccer help you on the basketball court. And I think that the one thing that so many parents, they live vicariously through their kids, and the dad who never achieved athletic greatness, and part of it's financial. A lot of these kids want to play that sport to get their college education funded. I think that it's an unhealthy trend, and I think we need to go back to the days when kids did everything. Kids could just be kids and not just come home every day and go practice their baseball.
Why do you think that's gone to this place now of specialization, and you have these parents that feel that if they, because intuitively it sounds what you said makes sense, but parents are still putting their kids in one sport because that's the one that's going to give them their ticket.
They think they're doing it the right thing for their kid. I don't blame them. It's not like and the kid loves it, but those kids burn out faster. The kids who are only playing baseball, say from the time they're 10 or 12, by the time they're 18, they might be done with baseball. I think you're more likely to stick with it if you've got other stuff going on as well. So you can't blame them. And the finance part today, let's face it, college costs, $300,000 today at a private school. Most Americans can't afford that right off the top of their bank account. So the idea of a kid getting a scholarship through athletics is very real and valid. But there's nothing that says you can't still get a college scholarship and still be a 2 or 3 sport athlete. And even if it's not organized sport, even if it's not school sports and those other sports, go out and do other things with your kid. Foster. Go play golf. I mean, do something that's totally unrelated. Although taking up golf, I always tell people, stick pins in your eyes because the pain will be over faster from that than from taking up golf.
Yeah.
But I just encourage.
So you calling golf a sport?
You're not? We all have.
Only because you haven't seen him play golf.
Well,
That's why.
I'm a hack. I mean, I'm a bogey golfer. Is it an athletic endeavor only when it rains so much like it has lately and it's cart paths only? Because then I'm exhausted from walking from my cart to the ball. But I think we have Tiger Woods to thank for that. Tiger Woods brought athleticism to golf. Yeah. I think golf today, if you watch a golf tournament on TV today, those guys that you're seeing out there on Saturday and Sunday are cut. Yeah, those guys are athletes by anybody's definition of athlete. Those guys are athletes.
I wonder with the whole kids thing, because we talk about this. We have kids, all of us, in travel, sports, and stuff, and the environment for kids has changed. We all used to come home and we were mowing neighbors' yards. We were doing things that were entrepreneurial as kids, as 10, 11, 12, 13. And because of the liability and lawsuits and this and that, kids don't have that opportunity as much. And so it seems like sports is where parents have transitioned that. And aside from sports, because you're a very entrepreneurial minded person, I wonder if kids are going to be impacted by the way we think about business and entrepreneurship in that next generation because of the lack of that kind of freedom, if you will.
I worry about it a little bit. I think that COVID changed many, many young people's definition of work. They got scared of work. They got scared of going to work. They want to work from home. I don't know what it's going to take to overcome that. That's definitely going to decrease a lot of the business, entrepreneurial. It's almost become a dirty word to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, these kids today, they want to go into finance, or they want to do a startup. All these stuff that they throw out there. It's like the old thing we used to say that only one kid out of 20,000 gets to play at the major minor league or major league level. The pyramid is so steep. The pyramid is that steep in business as well.
Yep.
It's not just you decide, I want to get my business degree and I'm going to start a company and be a Fortune 500 guy. The pyramid is probably steeper because everybody is out there working. They're not just athletes. So I worry about where young people are going with entrepreneurship and everything else. I think a lot of opportunities have dried up. And I think that more important, the definition of work, and it's almost become in our society today. I promised I wasn't going to get political, so I'll stay as apolitical as I can. But it's almost like, this is why Mitt Romney could never be president. He was always apologizing for his wealth. I think that it's almost become a dirty word to work hard, to try to make a sizable income and employ others. And whereas that's the foundation of what America was built on. And it almost seems like we've lost that. We're more worried about climate change. I mean, I think climate change is probably overblown a little bit. I think there's probably a way for a lot of people to make money in a green type thought process, but you can't force it. You can't force technology. It's like you can't say no more gasoline cars by 2035 because you're not going to have the infrastructure to support all electric cars by 2035. So you can't push technology. You got to let technology just happen. And I think on our political front, that's not what's happening right now. I think we're forcing technology, and you can't force technology.
Well, going back to the thing you brought up about COVID and how it's affected, kids. Did you see that did that affect your business? And also, do you see that kids are playing sports less because of going through COVID, or is it kind of bounced back now? And how did you see during COVID? People aren't playing sports, so they're not going to get injured. That probably affected your patients. Yes,
it did. School sports were shut down, right? So we see a lot of athletes at all levels here. Degenerative disease, total knees and total hips stayed the same. People who, once they got over the fear of being in the hospital for a day or two, which was in the very first few months of COVID, it was a ghost town, okay? But once we got past that, people who had degenerative processes and underlying diseases still needed care and still got care. We stayed pretty busy doing that, but sports shut down. As a matter of fact, golf was one of the few sports you could play. You're out there by yourself. The other three guys in your foursome, none of us hit it straight, so they're all over the place, right? So golf was one of the few things you could do. As a matter of fact, I think the number of rounds of golf that were played nationwide went up something like 35 or 40% during COVID. It was phenomenal. But other sports were shut down. It's kind of back now. As a matter of fact, it's all the way back. I don't think we're seeing any restriction anymore from COVID and COVID-related phenomena that has cut down sports. So the interesting thing is when it first came back, we had a spike because people were unconditioned. People hadn't been doing it for the last 12 months or so. And now suddenly I'm back and, I wasn't in my stretching program. I wasn't in my strengthening program. Here comes this Achilles tendon rupture and that biceps tendon injury and stuff like that. So it's funny how by not staying, not funny, but it's a phenomenon that occurred that when we first got back into sports, injuries spiked. And also they hadn't gotten coaching for a number of months. So all the things that would make more injuries occurred, and the injuries happened, and we had to deal with it. But now things have kind of gone back to the status quo, to the pre-COVID.
What sports are you seeing as the most, maybe most dangerous or the most injuries? I guess there's two different questions there.
Yeah, there are, and it depends on age. Pickleball. To steal from a comedian who I forget who was, pickleball been very good to me. Okay, I mean, I see so many pickleball injuries because these are mostly people in their 50s and 60s who are not the most phenomenal shape to begin with, and they get out there on the pickleball court.
He's talking to my dad right now.
And they think, or my friends, I hope they're not listening. They get out there, and a couple of things happen in pickleball which are very unique. The pickleball court is smaller than a tennis court. So a 60-year-old weekend warrior gets on the pickleball court and he goes, oh, I can get anything on this court. I can reach anything. So somebody will hit a ball that's far away on a tennis court, he wouldn't even give a thought to chasing that ball. But on a pickleball court, he thinks he can get to it because it's a much smaller court. And he tears his Achilles tendon as he runs to get that ball that's far away. So we see a tremendous number of pickleball injuries. Achilles, ankles, wrists from people falling on an outstretched hand. Eye injuries. People don't wear goggles in pickleball. They should. They don't. Not quite as bad as getting an aluminum bat into your cheek, but it is what it is. Footwear. People don't think that I need to wear the appropriate shoe for a pickleball court. So stuff that's
pickleball's dangerous.
So the message is don't play pickleball.
No, the message is treat it with respect like any other sport. You wear the appropriate gear and you do the appropriate stretching and conditioning to do the sport, and it's a perfectly wonderful sport. But people take it more lightly. They think of it like badminton or shuffleboard or something, and they don't give it the proper respect that it deserves.
Is that shuffleboard a sport?
Are they athletes?
I'm not sure.
You're on a cruise and you're playing
Next
shuffleboard. Does that make you an athlete?
Cornhole.
As long as you have a beer.
There is. Wait. No, I have had the commissioner of the National Cornhole League on my radio show. There is such a thing. There's professional cornhole.
Oh, I know. It was the only thing on during COVID. There literally was cornhole tournaments and arm wrestling tournaments on ESPN.
I still remember that arm wrestling one on ESPN years ago, though, when the guy broke his elbow. But that's a whole nother story. But so I think you have to just treat whatever sport you're doing with the appropriate respect and treat yourself with the appropriate respect.
So pickleball's the most dangerous. What's the next most dangerous?
In that age, in that demographic, okay? We see a lot of football injuries, of course. Football's a contact sport. No matter how much you change the rules, no matter how much better you protect the players, it's a contact sport. There's going to be significant injuries. I like the trend towards the Guardian helmet that we're seeing come aboard in the NFL and at colleges now. I think that's going to catch on. I've always said for years, if you want to get rid of concussions in football, take away the helmet. Rugby doesn't have a lot of concussions. They have a helmet. They have a weapon. They use it. If you put them back in leather helmets like in the old days, the incidence of concussions would probably decrease dramatically, but it's not going to happen.
Quit using it as a weapon.
That's exactly right. You give a guy a weapon, he's going to use it. Yeah. Football's a lot. We see a lot of water polo injuries. We see a lot of volleyball injuries. Baseball, not so much. I'm thinking mostly high school. The bulk of our athletic population here is the high school age group and college age group. So those are the ones that really come out the best. But any sport that's overused, somebody's going to overuse. So swimmers get a lot of shoulder issues, some knee issues. It's just, it harks back to what I said a couple of minutes ago. You shouldn't just be doing one thing. You should be crossing over. You shouldn't be swimming the same every day. You should maybe swim Monday, Wednesday, Friday, do something else on Tuesday and Thursday. Our bodies were not built for the abuse that we're starting to build them up to, and there's no way to get around that.
Well, one of the things when I saw that we were going to sit down with you that I wanted to ask is getting away from sports and looking at the professional side of it and the business side of it. Your industry's changed a lot. It's become highly institutionalized with these ginormous medical groups where a lot of physicians back in the day either owned their own practices or they're in partnerships. And now a lot of them are W-2s. If there's that inspirational student that's coming out of medical school that does want to be an entrepreneur, What's that path look like for them these days?
You're right. A much higher percentage of physicians coming out now are going into an employed model, be it Kaiser, be it a foundation, be it for one of the big health systems. They just don't want the hassles of also being a boss and hiring and firing and HR issues and everything else that goes along with any business you want to go into.
Is that a bad thing?
No. Well, yes, I think it is a bad thing. I think that being in a private practice, which is a shrinking model in today's healthcare world, helps you become a better practitioner by being the businessman as well. And here's why I think that. I think it makes you more efficient in your time. It makes you more efficient in the way you spend medical dollars. I think that this is a business like anything else. For me to say to a patient, oh, let's just send you for an MRI scan, that patient's going to have a certain out-of-pocket responsibility for that. I don't care what kind of insurance they have, whether it's Medicare, whether it's PPO, whatever it is. There's some financial responsibility. If you treat taking care of patients with the thought in your mind constantly, how is this going to financially impact this patient? Not, am I going to make money on their MRI scan? That's not the thought process. The thought process is you got to wear the patient's shoes and say, how is this going to affect this patient? Do they really need this? Is it going to change how I'm going to treat their condition? Those kinds of questions. I think that makes you a better physician. And I think that that's the way I've done it from the get-go. Myself and my partners have done that from the get-go. I mean, like I said, we started as a 3-man practice. We're now a 24-doctor practice, just orthopedics. Everybody's subspecialty trained, everybody's fellowship trained, so the quality of care has gone like this because everybody does fellowships now. 90 to 95% of orthopedic residents go into a fellowship before they go out and work. So I think that all of those things improve the quality of care. Now let's take that to the next level. Aside from having the private practice, we opened our own orthopedic surgery center in 1998, I believe, in partnership with Hoag Hospital, which is the hospital that we've always worked with, telling them, we had to demonstrate it, but our premise was if we have our own surgery center, that we have skin in the game, we are going to improve outcomes, we are going to lower costs, we are going to improve the patient experience. And they took a chance on that. That was a flyer in those days, but we had an administration that was forward-thinking, and we had a track record with them for 15 years that we worked at their facility. So we opened this orthopedic surgery center, which is now in this building that we're sitting in today, that we both own together. And indeed, looking back on it several years later, in addition to being profitable, no margin, no mission, right? The patient outcomes were better. Our infection rate was lower. Our cost per case was lower. Our patients were more satisfied. They enjoyed the experience more because they felt it was a specialty place that really understood my problem.
Well, they're getting out
and it
quicker
worked
too, right?
So then, fast forward, 10 years later, we said, you know what? This worked so well, we think we should do this with a hospital and have an orthopedic hospital that will do in partnership with you. And that's where HOI, Hoag Orthopedic Institute, was born. And now 12 years later, since we opened that, we do more total joints than any other hospital west of the Mississippi. Our patient outcomes are number one in the United States in terms of complication rate and infection rate. Number one in the United States in 12 years. That's
awesome.
Pretty incredible.
Yeah, it is.
It's been profitable, and our patient experience, our patient satisfaction scores are just off the chart. I can't tell you how many days I'll be at the grocery store and somebody will say, oh, Alan, I was at your hospital. It's my hospital. My name's not on it, and it was fantastic. I had a wonderful experience. That means so much to me. That's my legacy. I mean, I'm winding my practice down after 40 years. That's my legacy, that I was instrumental. I was one of the creators of an institution that raised the bar in terms of musculoskeletal care in Orange County. We improved the level of orthopedic care in Orange County and set the bar for it. And to me, that's what entrepreneurship is all about.
Well, but your question about kind of the entrepreneurial mindset? And is it a problem the problem in my mind would be if all the opportunities are to be a W-2 physician, but you want to be an entrepreneur, and how do they do that? Is there a roadmap for somebody to behave the way you did when you went out there in today's world?
Yeah, and also, do you think there are more barriers than there were in the past? Because you've seen this trend of private practice going away, not going away completely because you're successful at it, but is that unique? And what we're seeing is this continued trend. Because I remember even 25 years ago when I was going to university and I was thinking about medicine, and every doctor I talked to said it's changing. Don't do it. That was the message.
It's still changing, and it's not changing for the better for the physicians. I can tell you that for sure. It's been the ramp on that treadmill has constantly been increasing the incline ever since I've been in practice. So it's harder. There's no doubt that it's harder. I think that the days of the 1 or 2 man practice are over. Insurance companies and hospitals don't want to deal with a 1 or 2 man practice. You need size to have any kind of credibility and strength at the bargaining table. So you got to join a practice that's existing. Now, how does a young guy fresh out now join us instead of going to Kaiser or to a foundation? He or she's going to have the opportunity to become a partner in those hospitals and surgery centers that the practice has been involved in. So that's a huge draw. We get cream of the crop graduates coming to try to join us. And anybody who still has a bit of that entrepreneurial mindset is going to do that.
Is that like an eat what you kill model?
Yes, it is. Although you have to learn, and this is something that took me years to learn, you can't let the guys who are the biggest producers in terms of revenue, who in today's times are probably the spine surgeons, you can't let them run the whole show, because in order to really be a full service facility, you have to have the foot and ankle guys. The guys who don't bring in as many dollars as the spine guys do. But you have to have a somewhat socialistic look in terms of how you run the practice. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to offer all of those things. So you get around, there's creative ways to get around that. And this is the part that I enjoy in terms of being a business person, not just a doctor. You have to figure out, okay, are we going to split our overhead, which is a very real thing? Are we going to split it evenly? That really punishes the low dollar guys like the foot and ankle guys and rewards the spine guys. So, okay, we need some kind of blended model where it's going to be part fixed, part based on revenue and productivity, and you come up with a solution. I'm always fond of using the term that if all of the participants in the discussion of how we're going to change the overhead come out of the room equally unhappy, we succeeded. That's the definition of success. Everybody is equally unhappy. And that's how you have to run it. You have to run it like any other business, but everybody's got to be happy. Because if you've got a couple of disgruntled people, that's toxic. And that can make any business, be it in medicine or anything else, just fall flat on its face.
It's crazy. This is, I was really interested to just hear you speak about that, because what you're describing is the exact same way our firm's set up. It's the same way we compete. It's the same way law firms compete. It's the same way financial firms compete, and all the same things of overhead allocation. It applies exactly across all these other industries. It's just a different profession.
That's right.
That you use to serve people with.
So the principles are the same as what happens in any business.
What's interesting is also you mentioned the people that are, how do you address the toxicity when you have the couple of bad apples? How do you?
Oh, you're talking about the spine doctors?
Yeah. No, not the spine doctors, but just when
they don't respect
when
the
you
foot
have
guys.
this, when you have a partnership here, and everybody, if they're collaborating and kind of, hey, we're all in this together.
That's a good question.
You can grow much quicker than when you have people that are trying to get their part and pull things down.
It's
hard. How do you address those people?
So first of all, I'm not going to lie and say everybody's always been ecstatic. The way we deal with it, when we take on somebody new, that first 2 years, they're usually on a salary with some productivity bonus. And then after 2 years, If they're happy and we're happy, we, the shareholders, are happy, they're invited to join the partnership. So there's that trial period where you kind of get to know each other, and it's a two-way street. It's not just the shareholders. The young person has to say, I'm comfortable in this environment. This is where I want to be. And we've also had people leave over the years for whatever reasons. They just geographically had an issue. Their wife didn't want them, or husband didn't want them working as hard as. In an eat what you kill model like this, by the way, this isn't a 20-hour week.
Oh, yeah.
These guys know when they come in, I gotta churn here. I gotta work. This is not an academic
not
practice.
a Kaiser.
Or academia. There's the perfect example where you get this huge salary because the university is paying you, and you have a lot of politics, which we don't have as much of, thank goodness. But you don't really. There's not a great expectation on you to do a great deal of work. You're an academic. Yes, you're going to teach some students. That's part of your responsibility. But there's no burning platform to make you work hard because your salary is your salary with pretty much very little in terms of upside. So that's why the academic model is so research-oriented, because they're basically paid to be researchers, not to see patients. So this model is much, much different than that. Am I going to say that it's always a big kumbaya hug every Friday we get afternoon and together in the afternoon and have a big hug? No. As a matter of fact, quite frankly, in my practice, I can count on one hand the number of social things any of our guys do with each other on the weekends or off hours. We're not that kind of group. It's not that we're best buddies. There's an age span of 40 years. So but it works in the business world. You don't have to go away for a golf weekend with your law partners or your whatever partners for it to be successful. You can each do what you do well, do it in the confines of where you work. And if the thing is thriving, it's funny how when quarterly distribution checks go out, everybody's always best friends, right? It's when those checks don't go out, something's wrong with the machine, that people are suddenly grousing and unhappy. So it's really, like you said, it's really like any other business in that regard.
I'm curious, shifting away from business, we were speaking a little bit before we got on here, and then while we were on about music, a lot about chameleons. You have an interest in cars. You seem like somebody who just has a thirst of learning and knowledge and interacting with people. Has that always been the case? And is that right or not right?
No, it's true. I have a lot of different interests. I'm not 100% all about medicine. I worked a lot of hours for a lot of years here. Didn't see my kid, missed a lot of things with my kids. Disneyland things and that had to cancel for a reason or something like that. My kids were very understanding. Just had my first grandchild.
Congrats.
Which is why I, right now, have just gone to working half-time because I'm not going to make the same mistake with my granddaughter as I made with my kids. But I think that just makes life more enjoyable.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't be a one-trick pony. I'll share that when I was 30 years old, I was diagnosed with testicular cancer. When I was with Dr. Curlin and Dr. Joe, it was actually during that year. Both of them were like huge mentors to me through that. And sometimes it takes an incident like that to make you appreciate life and appreciate what you have. And that stuck with me. It's like you're 30, you're just finishing your training after all these years, ready to go out and slay the world. And the guy comes in and says, boom, we got to do this. And it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
So you process that, you get over it, and you move on.
You use the word mistake. You've been highly successful in your professional career. If you rewound the tape, are there things that you would do different to balance work and home life, or how would you approach it?
So I really think, and this makes me a real dinosaur, I really think that would I have worked less and spent more time with family? I think that I wouldn't have enjoyed the success that we've been able to enjoy if I had. So I really think that looking back on it, what would I have done differently in terms of my life-work balance? The right answer is probably I would have done nothing different.
It was a different time too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Nobody was at home working from home all day, and the atmosphere we have
Very
now
true.
is different.
Very true. And in those days, now we have hospitalists in the hospital who are there 24 hours. In the days that I started out, the first 20 years of my practice, and somebody came in with a broken wrist or a broken hip, you had to go in and see him if it was 3 o'clock in the morning. I mean, those days are over now. The system has changed to make life balance a little easier to achieve for the younger people who are come aboard. But based on the times that I did it and what the system was when I did it, I think that I don't look back and say I blew that one. I should have done it this way. I really can't think of very many times that I did that.
Well,
which is very lucky.
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I don't know that many orthopedic surgeons, and I don't know what the stats are, but I don't think a lot of them run sports talk shows and podcasts. And where does that come from?
That just came out of nowhere.
Is it just a personal
years?
interest?
No, for years, I had a Rolodex. I was on a lot of Rolodexes of media guys, sports guys on radio and TV, print media people who, when, Kobe Bryant would have an injury, they'd call me and say, Alan, what does this mean? How long are they going to be out for? What are the options? That kind of thing. Because I talk English. I don't talk doctor. You know what I mean? So they found it very easy to talk to me and explain. And that came over years and years of exposure. So about 6 or 7 years ago, our PR people, and I'd done that a number of times for Roger Lodge and a couple of the other people on KLAA, which is the Angels radio network. So when we opened the hospital, our PR people then and the KLA people came up with this concept that, hey, why don't we have Doc maybe do a sports medicine radio show? It sounds like mine. So they pitched it to me, and I said, what, are you kidding? I mean, this isn't in my wheelhouse. I'm not a radio guy. So they said, try it. If you don't like it, we'll stop it. So we did the first one, was a half an hour. I wrote out the whole show. I scripted the entire show.
And he doesn't
I
seem
show
like
up,
a scripted talker.
I show up with a sheaf of papers. I'm on the air. The little light goes on. And I just basically I felt like a newsreader, right? I just read my script. I listened back to it, and I said, that was terrible. So the following week, I said, okay, I just took a piece of paper, and I put 6 or 7 bullet points on it, and I just started to just free talk off of my bullet points. What happened that week in baseball? Who was hurt? What does that mean? Blah, blah, blah. And that worked. But I told him after 2 or 3 weeks, I said, I need an hour. A half hour is not enough. So they gave me an hour.
Like, I'm barely getting warmed up at 30 minutes.
And it just evolved. I mean, I have guests every week, and I've had all kinds of guests. I mean, I've had people from Billie Jean King and Johnny Bench, world-class athletes, to Joey Chestnut, the hot dog guy. So
you need a lot of hot dogs, too.
And I had a paintball guy. A couple of weeks ago, I had a professional paintball guy on. I said, I didn't even know
That's what we're saying. We insure the guys who started the sport of paintball. We insure them. Yeah.
Well, I learned a lot about paintball. And the guy was very, very articulate, actually. He's a professional for the Austin Notorious is the name of his team. But anyway, so I always have a guest. I always have a couple of segments where I just get to say whatever the heck I feel like saying. And then I have call-ins and emails and stuff like that. So
go Chiefs. I heard your summary. I'm from Kansas City.
The Chiefs were very good to me this year.
So, you hear all this negative about the changing of medicine. What about it? Like, what is inspiring you about the changing of medicine? Like, or at least in sports medicine, what's going on in the field? What's the cutting edge stuff that gets you really excited?
So there's a few things. There's some which are, we talked about guys who are, how they're going to be good doctors or not good doctors and stuff like that. Stem cells. Everybody loves, there's certain words that people just get real excited about. Patients, stem cells, lasers, robots, Then as soon as they hear that, they think,
Sci-fi
the
stuff.
guy who's doing this must be like world class, right? Stem cells, someday we will figure out in orthopedics how to take stem cells and really grow cartilage only where we want to grow it, how much we need to grow. Really, right now we're not there. I don't know how much longer it's going to take till we get there. But
I
of
just
course,
had it put in my vertebrae
well,
last week.
of course,
Literally.
there are many people who are just deciding, I'm going to do this because I think it might work.
So he wasted his money, basically.
Well,
what you're saying.
I tell people
At
that
our friend's place.
I tell people that they'll walk better after stem cells because their wallet will be a lot lighter because insurance doesn't pay for it.
My credit
right?
card didn't
Yeah,
get
yeah.
any lighter
And-
after that charge.
And it works in some people, and it doesn't work in other people. The trouble is that percentage of the people that it works in isn't reliable enough yet for me to sit here and look at a patient and say, look, even though your insurance isn't paying for this, I think it's worth $8,000 or $10,000 because it's going to make you better. If there's a 50% chance it's going to make you better, I just don't feel comfortable telling people that. I think it'll get to that point and beyond. It's just not there yet.
Yeah.
But
How long
that is what
gonna-
it is.
How long is that going to be?
Great question. I might be dead. I might be. It might take that much
Am
longer.
I going to be dead too?
Not from the stem cells.
Okay,
no.
okay.
So the other thing that excites me that's coming along is robots. We're starting to use more and more robotic technology to ensure that when we do a joint replacement, all the cuts are made perfectly and the alignment is perfect. Now, for those of us who've done thousands of these procedures over the years, there are, pretty good skill levels in terms of getting it pretty spot on just about all the time. There are some cases that are really, really deformed and really have a great deal of intricacy in terms of how to place the parts that the robot helps a very experienced surgeon. But unfortunately, surgeons aren't coming out of training as experienced as we used to because they have far less hours of training. That's been legislated. And B, there are more of them around, so each of them gets less opportunity to do the cases. And, Malcolm Gladwell said years ago, 10,000 hours is the number of hours you need to really master something. It takes years of being in practice till you're really doing total knees for 10,000 hours. Robots will speed that up. The robots will make the surgeons get to that point faster. The part that scares me about robots is no such thing as something that's only good and has no bad, right? It's the same thing as autopilot on an airplane. I worry about when the autopilot fails, is that pilot going to know how to fly this airplane? Because he's usually not a military pilot anymore. The military used to churn out all our pilots. They were awesome, right? Those days are gone. The military's not churning out as many pilots. The planes have gotten more complicated. The computer's doing more and more stuff. When that fails, as we saw with a couple of 737 MAXs, right? American pilots probably could have saved those planes, but pilots who weren't trained as highly, planes went down. So I hope there's no lawyers on those cases listening to this podcast, but that's just a function of technology. Technology makes the people not quite as capable of when the technology fails. So we're just going to have to figure that one out.
All right. So we're going to move into our rapid fire.
If you had or have a yacht, what would you name it?
I don't have a yacht because a yacht is a
I
hole.
was like, did you ask him if he had a yacht?
I was thinking you might have.
I know. I
It's
was
a
like,
hole
We
in the
saw
ocean.
your car. We saw your car out
It's a
there.
hole in the ocean into which you throw money.
Yeah.
That would be- I don't have a yacht. The Jews were not boating people. That's why Moses had to part the Red Sea so they could walk across.
So that might be his name, not booting people.
No yacht.
All right.
All right.
Next one.
Who do you admire most and why?
Wow. There's probably a couple, but I'd say the one person, Mel Brooks is probably the one person I'd love to have dinner with. The one person I think I admire the most and would love to have met and chatted with is probably Albert Einstein. I've always had this thing for his hair. No. Really, Albert Einstein was
That's a good
is
one.
probably the guy.
All right. This is one is what would you say your strangest quirk is?
Wow. There are so many. That's a really good question. I've never given that any thought.
There's not a quirky ritual on the golf
I know.
course.
I know what it is. My kids figured this one out during one of my first ever, on TV interviews. I don't blink When I'm on TV, I just am so focused and I have my eyes like I don't blink.
That is
a
a quirk.
Cool.
Yeah.
I like
And
it.
a unique talent.
I don't think it's a talent. And my eyes get kind of dry by 5 or 6 minutes.
But you'd be really good when the eye doctor does that thing where it poofs in your
Yeah,
eyes.
no,
You're like, I
that's-
got this nailed. What I feel like he's gonna be locked and loaded on this one. What's your favorite joke?
I can't tell it on this podcast.
Is your second favorite clean or cleanish?
I'm known as a bit of a jokester, especially on the golf course and in the operating room. I've had to dial a lot of it back, thanks to the Me Too movement.
Probably EPL.
As a matter of fact, when I went for my sexual harassment training, I asked the trainers harass one word or two. But
That's a pretty good one, actually, for the insurance people listening.
yeah, I think that'll have to do for today.
That's perfect.
Oh, my turn. What is the most interesting thing you have in your wallet?
Oh, definitely my American Express Platinum card. I mean, I say I'm 5'5" until I stand on my American Express Platinum card. Then I'm as tall as I want to be.
I like that.
I feel like he's gonna have to clean this answer up too. If you were invisible, where would you go? He's like, I'm gonna have to go to option 8 on my list.
Wow, that's kind of almost like asking who is your freebie that your wife.
Yeah, I was
It's
thinking.
okay, right?
I was thinking.
It does. Those are kind of related questions,
Yeah, they are,
aren't
they?
they?
Are.
Where would I want to go if I was invisible? Well, it wouldn't be to Dr. Fauci's house. I think that one thing I've often thought about, and this is actually going to be a little weird, so it's kind of invisible but not invisible. I'd like to hear what is said at my funeral.
Interesting.
I mean,
Have you thought about that? What people will say about you?
that's kind of how I judge people.
Yeah.
I think everybody's thought about it at some point in time. Who would show up?
I
And
mean,
what would they say?
am I just, kidding myself, or do people really? That's an insecurity too. That's like we can open a whole psychological
we'd
hour.
have a
here
whole
now,
nother
right?
hour.
That's probably where I would say I'd want to be.
I like that.
I like that.
A fly on the wall at my funeral.
Yeah.
He's already kind of told us what's next. It sounds like grandchildren.
Well,
are
yeah.
next.
I don't want to retire. I'm not ready to retire. I love what I do too much to retire. I still love coming to the office. I've cut back to like half time now in the office, and I don't do knee replacements anymore, but I still do scopes. So I cut out the big, heavy physical saws and hammers and drills operations, and I just do the scopes.
I thought it just gave
But,
me a horrible vision when you said that.
I'm a carpenter. I'm
Yeah.
a carpenter. That reminds me of the best joke. I do have a good, clean joke to tell. You know how?
Oh, yeah, let's circle back.
You know how you know Jesus was Jewish?
How?
He went into his father's business, carpentry. He still lived at home when he was 30 years old, and his mother thought he was God. Okay, so where were we? Oh,
What's
cutting
next?
back. What's next? So I'm still seeing patients in the office half time, 3.5 days a week, and I love that because I'm a people person, as you can probably tell. I just love the schmooze, the talking to people, and many of these people have been patients of mine for 30 years, so I don't want to give that up. I'm not ready to give that up.
I think you should put pickleball and
I'm not going to play.
cornhole.
I am not
on
going to
your
play
list.
pickleball. I'm
Maybe
not gonna
paintball.
No, I'll play more golf. I love golf. I love being out there with my friends, just telling stories and just making like we know what we're doing. So
All right. Well, Chameleon Farm's not on the list.
no, I'm not
there,
going to be a
but-
chameleon.
Okay.
farmer.
Well, this is the part where, you've had a really interesting journey, and now this is the part where you reflect back and look back at your younger self, and what kind of advice would you, give your younger self?
Wait till you're older till you get married the first time. Don't get married the second time for the wrong reasons.
And what'd you learn?
And wait till the third time till you have kids.
Okay.
Which is what I did. No, I think that a denominator under your assets is a very bad thing. You want to keep your denominator at 1. That's really an important goal in life. Not always achievable, but something you should definitely aspire to.
Good advice.
I think that I wish I'd had my kids a little younger. But you always have that age-old thing of, if you have your kids too young when you're still in residency, you can't work as hard. I mean, you worked 110 hours a week when you're a resident. That's even worse than the number of hours I was working when I finally had kids. So too young, you're still working and building your career, and you don't have the financial stability. Too old, by the time your kids are older, you're too old to be with the grandkids for that long. So you got to find the happy medium on that. I think that I still have a lot to offer, which I do here, to the younger doctors coming up. I think mentoring is a very, very important part for physicians to do towards the end of their career. There's so many things that we've learned over the years that we need to pass them along to the younger doctors to make them better physicians. I'll give you a quick example of the kind of thing that I always tell them. Don't go into the exam room and be on the computer with your back to the patient doing this and your back's to the patient. I said, don't do that. You've lost that patient. Always look them in the eye. And 2, try to make it personal. Make it a personal visit, not a doctor visit. And the trick that I've always used that Dr. Curlin taught me was when I see a patient and I dictate that office note for that day, usually right after I walk out of the room. If they say, well, I can't come back in 3 weeks because I'm going on a cruise or so on, I'll be back in 5 weeks. And I'll say, fine. And then I'll go out of the room and I'll dictate my note and I'll say, I'll see them back in 5 weeks when they get back from their cruise to Greece. So whatever I do, whenever I go into a patient's room, before I go in the room, I read my last note.
That's that business mindset. Yeah.
And I see, I'll be back when I go. So the first thing I do when I walk in the room is, how was Greece? And they go, how the hell did he remember that? And he sees hundreds of patients. How does he remember that I went to Greece? Well, I read my last note, duh. But I mean, little things like that. That's the art of medicine, not the science of medicine. And like you said, that's business.
Yeah, I'm not even going to ask the difference question because that's it. You as a physician, you're relatable and you personalize it. And that's not something that happens very often or in a lot of experiences. And I think it's really what people value the most in a physician is being able to feel connected to, how they're helping them.
Yeah, I agree. I think that makes the relationship much more comfortable. They're more likely to be honest with you. And you're going to do a better job in taking care of them if you feel some personal connection, not just robotically decide to do this.
Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. So for the listeners that want to follow you, listen to you, or get in contact, where do they find you?
So at HoagOrthopedicInstitute.com is the hospital's website where I'm featured along with all the physicians on staff. All my podcasts for my radio show are on there too if they're interested in one particular guest. And here it would be at NewportOrthopedicInstitute.com, which is the practice's website, and they can get hold of me there. I don't have Instagram. I don't do Twitter. I don't do any of that stuff. And I don't do TikTok either. So I'm very...
But you're all over Snapchat.
Yeah, Snapchat's big.
Yeah.
All right,
thank you guys. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, we really
for
appreciate it.
having
Very,
us.
very interesting stuff.
Thank you.